expert and author Alison Stewart-Allen and the writer and academic Mo Lovett. Lovely to see you both. And Alison, to you first, the story on the front of the FT. Problems in Russia, who'd have thunk it?
Well, this is a challenge for any brand that's looking at whether to continue operating there somehow, even if it's through a JV partner, joint venture partner. But really the question is, how do you get your profits out? And a lot of these brands that we know from the UK, from the US, from across Europe and around the world have a big decision to make. And that is, do we actually keep an infrastructure, a shell of an operation in Russia in the hope that we can turn the tap back on at some point, or do we actually exit the country altogether? And this is posing big headaches for corporate leaders who are trying to decide what to do.
Yeah, and one suspects, Alison, that plenty of them will look at what happens over the next couple of weeks before making any kind of decision on that. Well, let's talk about politics, though, and of course, huge week for the pointy-headed amongst us who love the ins and outs of local elections, but there's so much going on here. Take us to the front of the eye.
Yeah, so the front of the eye are reporting that cabinet ministers, key Tory cabinet ministers, will be deployed to key seats where the Tories really hope to win. And this is in the wake of obviously a disappointing result in the Wakefield by-election, and obviously with what's happening with Neil Parish, Tiverton and Honiton, that could well go to the Lib Dems. So the Tories are concerned about the local elections. They're predicted to lose a fair amount of seats, and some of the key boroughs in London that they'll be deployed to are Westminster, Barnet and Wandsworth. These are key seats that the Tories really want to win. And the suggestion is, certainly from some backbenchers, that if the Tories do have a bad showing in the local elections, this will be very bad news for Boris indeed. He's slightly suspicious of that because I still think a clear contender for the leadership has yet to emerge. But that's the suggestion, that they're going to put the heavy guns in the seats that they really want to win. It's interesting, they're all London, the ones that are quoted in the Eye article, they're all London seats. It would be interesting to see if any come up to the red wall so-called voters of the 2019 election. We'll see.
Yeah, we certainly will, although it does strike me, I mean, given the Conservatives have been in power since 2010, and people in government tend to lose seats at local elections, I wonder just how many they still have left to lose. Alison, though, take us to the front of the Times. We understand, of course, that there have been huge issues in cancer diagnosis over the past few years because of, very obviously, the pandemic, amongst other reasons, but there is a slight boost for cancer care on the front of the Times.
Yes, there is. I think one of the best things, oddly, about this moment is that with lower COVID rates, hopefully people feel safer showing up at a hospital and getting the care that they need. People for the last 2 years have been very wary, rightly, of wanting to go to get checked because of fear that they might contract the disease. But now I'm hoping, and this article suggests that we're a little more confident in being able to go to see a specialist if we have any concerns, and the NHS is saying that it wants to ramp up treatment because of the huge backlog from people being cautious.
Yeah, I mean, they want to ramp up, Alison, but is it possible? I mean, the fact of the matter is, a backlog's a backlog. You've got to deal with it, and you've got to deal with it in the order they've arrived.
Yes, absolutely right. But, what we're hearing and what I'm reading certainly suggests that the NHS is looking to more creative ways, perhaps, of treating people, which includes using private sector providers and private hospitals to aim to reduce that backlog. The real question is, how feasible is that? How much money will it cost to bring in those external partners? And we need, again, it's almost an infrastructure question again. How do we make sure that this backlog is going to be reduced rapidly, not just through NHS means, but by bringing in other capacity to be able to treat people.
Mo, take us to page 2 of the Mirror, and once again, the name Sunak in the papers, but rather relating to his wife.
Yeah, again, relating to his wife, actually, which is quite interesting in and of itself, I think. But this is the suggestion that a company that Akshata Malti, I hope I pronounced that right, has a £400 million stake in, has still yet to pull out of Russia, out of their Moscow offices. And this comes weeks after the Chancellor, if you remember, urged businesses to pull out of Russia, and yet the office is still there. Now, in their defence, the company's defence, they do state that they have started moving out of Moscow, started that process on the 19th of April. And it's also been pointed out that as a minority shareholder, Sunak's wife doesn't actually have a big share in the company, and she has no say over operational matters. So in that sense, I suppose she's got no accountability there. I think what it does point to, though, is she's incredibly wealthy, so that will play on people who think that Tories are out of touch because they're the party of the elite. That old idea that they're not actually the Brexit party of the working classes, but they're actually the old party of the elite. And also that sense that it's one rule for them and one rule for us, which is something that we saw throughout the pandemic being stated. So it's not a great look for Rishi Sunak, but I do think it's interesting that there's all these briefings against his wife. We could have a whole range of conversations about why that's the case.
Yeah, and indeed we should also probably point out, thanks to Alison's first story, Infosys are not the only company working out what they're going to be doing in Russia, are they? But Alison, let's talk rugby for a second, shall we? And a wonderful photo in the paper.
Yeah, absolutely inspiring. You have this gentleman with the team formed of his family, his sons, his grandchildren, and I do think it shows a few things. One, that just because you're in your mid to late 50s doesn't mean you can't stop playing, a contact sport such as rugby. Secondly, it's wonderful that he gets to play with his family, and he makes a point in this article of saying that the parallels between raising sons and the values of sport and raising them with those same values, there's much crossover. And I think, having gone myself to the rugby yesterday to see London Irish against Wasps, I can say that rugby is certainly an energetic and inspiring and a family sport. So very heartwarming story.
Heartwarming story, but I have to admit, I felt like I was popping a hernia just looking at them. To make an entire pack out of your boys and yourself, that's great. Alison Moe, we'll see you for more in the next half an hour. Thanks very much indeed. But stick right where you are. Coming up in the next hour, we will, of course, be returning to those evacuations from Mariupol. The first civilians have left the steelworks. We'll have the latest after this.